Good evening and welcome to the launch of our 2021 speaker series. I'm Jessica Siegel, journalism professor at NYU and events chair for the Deadline Club. That's the New York chapter and the largest, we like to say, of the 110-year-old Society of Professional Journalists, which promotes ethics in journalism, very important, professional development, and First Amendment rights. Keep your eye out for upcoming talks, everything from reporting on money, influence, and politics to our first historic journalism pub crawl and walking tour. Yes, it's coming in June, with or without a pandemic. And first, thank you to our events committee, Emma Chilikins, George Bodarky, Tricia Couture, and our new club president, Colin DeVries, who's at the controls right now. Thank you, Colin. And now for the secrets of getting published, from op-eds and reportage to nabbing that first book deal. We'll cover basics, then open the questions for chat. And thank you everybody for your input, letting us know what's going on, and also holding those questions until we open it. We welcome you to tweet. Our hashtag is Deadline Secrets. Speaker Twitter is in chat. Their Twitter is in chat right now. And you can also go to deadlineclub.org. The link is in chat to see the fuller bios, but I am going to do a full and proper introduction of our Fab Four speakers. And we're going alphabetical, what other way to go? And that begins us with Meredith Bennett-Smith. I first met her while co-teaching with her at NYU Journalism School, and today she's professoring at CUNY J School. She's right, no guff, I'm telling you, and much loved as founding editor of opinion sections at NBC News, and that's called Think, and MSNBC. And those are digital in print, not TV. Before that, she was Ideas, then deputy editor at Quartz, and the identity editor at Mike. And she'll tell us all about it. Chris Bonanos, over 27 years, he rose through the ranks at New York Magazine. It's some kind of miracle, and is now city editor who recently relaunched Curb. He's also written 3 books. This guy is not lying around. Most recently, Flash, the first biography of the great photographer Weegee, that won the National Book Critics Circle Award for Best Biography. Yes, Chris, let's see those books. Chris, can you show us those books? Hold them up. There we go, Flash. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now we have, oh, I'm going out of alphabetical order. Don't get worried, folks. Now we have Susan Shapiro. She is a writing guru dynamo. I am telling you, the author and co-author of 13 books, a lucky number, from the Byline Bible to her most recent, The Forgiveness Tour. I'm going to show it to you. Everyone hold up that book. How to Find the Perfect Apology. It kept me up late last night. I found it to be profound and funny page turner that will speak to anyone who's ever felt wrong. I'm sure there's no one here like that. As writing professor at the New School and elsewhere, she's mentored students to publish 150 books with advances ranging from $1,000K to $500,000. That is a true story. Oh, and here is one of those protege, Tiffanie Drayton, and I want everyone not to be jealous because she is speaking to us from sunny Trinidad and Tobago and was wearing Mardi Gras makeup earlier today. I saw her on Twitter. She will not lie. Her upcoming first book, a memoir, Black American Refugee, documents how she fled America for the Caribbean 7 years ago to escape what? Racism, of course. The book is upcoming spring 2021, and she also writes for Vox, Salon, Marie Claire, and Playboy. And how about we start with her amazing story as the youngest one here, the newcomer, Tiffanie. You got a top agent and a first-time book deal with Penguin Random House based on your sensational opinion piece published in the New York Times in June. Many people probably read it here, called Black American Refugee. But it was tough going getting that essay published. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the essay was actually rejected or just passed on by almost every editor I had worked with for the past 7 years. And I was like, no, I have to get this piece placed. I have to get this piece placed. So my final attempt was to put it up in a group a women's writers group on Facebook, which I'm not going to, it's a secret, so I don't know if I'm supposed to say it. So I threw it up in there and I was like, hey, anybody interested in this essay? Thinking nobody was going to be interested. And all of these great editors were just in the comments like, we want to look, we want to look. And this amazing editor, Janae Desmond Harris from the New York Times, she was like, send it over to me. I'm not sure, how they're going to feel about it, but I'll take a look. And so I sent it over to her and we went back and forth a couple of times. She was like, I can't make any promises. And then she was like, oh, by the way, it's going to be on the front cover of the opinion section next on Sunday. So it's like from one extreme of just rejection to this, just this incredible feat of getting it placed in the Times.
What do you make of the rounds of rejection? I mean, you've been writing for top publications for a long time. This was a story about your odyssey and sort of calling out the American racism. You first started writing about that with the murder of Trayvon Martin and have been going since. And somehow it was like May, June, a month after George Floyd, and you couldn't, or 2 months, and you couldn't get a nibble. That's so hard.
I mean, I don't even think about rejection anymore because it's just such a normal part of my existence. So, or it's a normal part of my career as a writer. So I just always focus pretty much on my goal, which is to get the piece published, to get a book, and also just to, stay focused on the goal. That's it.
Okay, and I think the takeaway here is you can be rejected by everybody and then be accepted by the top.
And that's exactly what happened. Everybody was like, no, we don't want it. And then I was like, wait, but the New York Times wanted it? Ha ha ha, you missed out.
And what does that tell you about opinions? We know. Okay, Meredith, I truly love the diversity of the NBC News THINK section, from politics and public policy to pop culture, like the recent piece comparing Biden versus Trump to Slytherin versus Gryffindor. Okay, that struck me. Can you tell us about your background and how you sort of rose up and then came to become the launching editor, not of one, but 2 opinion sections at NBC News and NBC News?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always wanted to be a journalist. I'm one of those people, but I am also the type of person who, when I was in high school, thought I would be like a foreign correspondent or something that I think when you are young and watch movies about journalists are told is kind of the glamorous thing about journalism. So I got my start writing, like all good journalists, about animal videos and cats on the internet.
I need to interrupt you.
Yep.
I have received a note in chat saying I am only seeing each speaker individually and not all of us at once. Apologies for the interruption. I do believe, and call me wrong, thank you, Sam Friedman, for correcting this. If you go to view at the top right of your screen and put it on gallery view rather than speaker view, you will see us all at once. I personally have it on speaker. I'm actually changing it to gallery view right now, which you might like better because then you'll just see us all. Okay. Oh, great. Thank you, Sam, for the communication. And anyone else, please. I don't see you, but I see you. Okay. So, Meredith, apologies. We need to get everyone with us. You're welcome, everybody. Okay, Meredith, could you just sort of get us back?
So what I was saying was I started my career writing about animal videos for Huffington Post, and literally in the cliche way. But when I think every step of the way that I have gone has pushed me towards opinion journalism, even though I didn't know it. So when I worked at Mike, I was working in identities, and Mike.com at the time was a new journalism startup. So it didn't say it was opinion, but that was my first experience editing pieces that had bias. Just unfortunately, I think for Mike, that bias wasn't necessarily transparently communicated, but there was a lot of angle and voice in those pieces. And as I was editing them, I started to think, oh, what if I just kind of edited opinion, since I'm already editing it, but was open about it. And so the leap from Mike to Quartz was actually very easy. And at Quartz, I really just became immersed in opinion and decided I thought this was the type of journalism and the format that I most enjoyed. And then I went to NBC, which, I think it's a testament to, one, not being worried necessarily about where you're going to be in 5 years, and following your path a little bit, and figuring out what type of journalism as you're editing it really speaks to you. And two, I was very lucky that people took a chance on me. NBC certainly took a chance on me when they hired me. And I think that also speaks to just being able to really internalize what you're writing and editing in those jobs, so that you can sell yourself to your next employer in a job that maybe you didn't have in the past. But you can say, I've done X, X, and X skill, which is why holistically together, I think I can do this job, even though that wasn't what I was doing at my past employment.
It's interesting what you say, that it was opinion but not labeled. And that has been a criticism of the media today, and one reason that we have fallen in the public esteem. And now at NBC News and MSNBC is very clearly labeled, and we know what it is. Also, I do want to just give a shout out to Fortitude. Meredith and I were teaching together at the time that she was at Mike, and it was not a pretty picture. And she, I hope I'm allowed to say that, and you really stuck it through and rose. So congrats on that. And now we see, it's like the story, we now see the next chapter of the story, and this is a really awesome section. Okay, Sue Shapiro.
Hi there.
I just want to say, you are a writing machine, and you have co-written 13 books in, did I get it, 20 years?
13 books my family hates. You forgot the last
Oh,
part.
everybody, 13 books her family hates. Every single one of them, each one more than the last. And we met 20 years ago before you'd had a one published. So I am especially bowing at your feet. Titles such as 5 Men Who Broke My Heart. She goes back to the old boyfriends. Lighting Up Unhooked, Addiction, The Byline Bible. By the way, this one is for anyone who wants to get published. You can see all my little post-its. I really recommend it highly to my students, especially for opinion. That is where it's at. And now the new memoir, The Forgiveness Tour. And I just have to say, Sue, you are always coming up with new ideas. How do you do it? How did you do it again with The Forgiveness Tour? Well, I sat down with it. I'm like, there cannot be a whole book in there. And suddenly it's like world philosophy, religion, the meaning of life, and plus a grudge. A very good combo. How did you do it?
Well, I say to my students, write about your most humiliating secret. That's the first assignment that I give, that has launched a lot of books and a lot of fantastic pieces. And so I guess in a way I do that myself. So I think that a lot of first person writing is fueled by drama, conflict, tension. So I had a horrible falling out with a mentor that I totally lost it and was flipping out. And so what is Joan Didion said, I write to find out what I'm thinking. So I started writing about it. And by the way, it was a 10-year odyssey where everybody in the world rejected it and didn't know what it was, and it didn't make sense. And I kept revising and revising. So this one took a while. It was complicated to figure out.
Sue, that's very interesting about the revisions. What can you give us, like, top 2 or 3 things you were doing in those revisions? So people understand what you are not, born overnight into a.
Well, one of the things that I highly recommend in classes, and actually Christopher Bonanos is a fantastic speaker who comes to Zoom in lately, but one of the things I highly recommend after I give assignments is to get really tough criticism before you do anything. Like, don't finish a piece at 3 a.m. and decide it's brilliant and send it to the New Yorker. You need criticism. So in my own life, luckily, aside from having, fantastic, amazing shrink who helped me get off of all my addictions and struggled with career and financial stuff and marriage and everything like that, I have a really tough writing group. I think you've sat in before. So I think Tiffanie has too. So I actually have 2 writing groups on Sunday and Thursday. So everything I write, I bring in, and they'll just say, throw this in the garbage, or this doesn't make sense, or, revise or whatever. So I think the feeling was early on, I had written a book, Lighting Up How I Stopped Smoking, Drinking, and Everything Else I Loved in Life Except Sex, which was like a funny memoir that I did from Random House in 2006. So I had the fantasy that this was going to be a funny follow-up. And they were like, this isn't funny. This is really dark. Just go there, keep going. But then it was only a personal story, which wasn't enough. So they were like, it needs more to it. A lot of times say you'll pitch an essay to an editor and they'll say, can it be a reported essay? Can you bring in experts? Can you bring wisdom? So I just kept trying and kept bringing it in. And I also hire ghost editors, which is one of my secrets. After I finish a book, I won't give it right to an agent. Even after the writing group goes over it, I'll hire a professional ghost editor who'll sometimes just say, okay, throw the first 4 chapters in the garbage or start here. This is what's working. This is what's not working. So this one it took a really long time to puzzle out, but I felt like, write about your obsessions, and I couldn't let go of this one.
All right. And so we're seeing outside editor, constant revisions, never send something out cold, sleep on it, never send something out.
Really tough criticism.
This is really great advice.
Thanks.
Across the board, whatever you're doing. Chris, I have to say, when I read the words that you had been at New York Magazine for 27 years in today's media environment, I was like, is he a survivor? Is he a victor? How did this happen? Can you tell us a bit about this journey? Again, I don't know if everyone here understands that to be today at any publication where our field is just being decimated, layoffs, they get rid of the senior people and then they have scandals, and they have kept the senior brain trust at New York Magazine, and you have recently relaunched Curb. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of this sort of evolution and the hats you've worn?
Well, nobody hired me. No.
Oh, there's truth in that for all of us.
More seriously, I have been there forever. I should correct you slightly. I did not relaunch Curb myself. Curb has an editor. I'm lending a hand on that. I'm sort of deputized to the editors who are relaunching Curb at the moment. But
okay, thank you.
It's not my own project, and I don't want to take credit for it. Anyway, but that sort of gets to the point I want to make, which is that I came into the magazine as a very young person as a copy editor. And after a few years of that, I became a listings editor back when there were listings, A lot of my experience there is pre-internet magazine experience, which, is of no use to anyone in explaining anything anymore. I got my job from a classified newspaper ad. That's how long ago it was.
Chris, what's a classified newspaper ad?
A long ago technique. They used to chisel them into stone, I think. So after that, I edited departments. I wrote. I did little features. I had a little column for a while. I edited blog posts on Intelligencer for a few months at one point. I worked on a couple of books that the magazine has put out as ancillary projects. Every couple of years, I've had a different job there. And so I've been able to, if I'd been stuck in one job for 20 odd years, I might have gotten sick of it and looked for something else. But honestly, it's sort of self-renewing. So
the magazine, very lucky that way. The magazine has evolved tremendously.
That's true. When I started there, it was a magazine that came out on paper every week. We did not yet have a website. We did not even have a dedicated computer site. The next year, we put something on the pre-web internet. It was a CompuServe site, if anyone is old enough to remember CompuServe.
We will not admit it.
Yeah. And then we, today, the magazine comes out every other week. With considerably fewer ads than it had back then. But we publish 100 stories a day online.
That's incredible.
And most of my work is done on our website. And, I had to learn, the core skill set of understanding what we do as a magazine remains, who our audience is, although it's shifted somewhat. There's still sort of a kernel of what's familiar in there. And the DNA of the magazine exists in everything that goes up online.
Okay.
But the set of skills I had to relearn were, a web headline is very different from a print headline. Stories take different shapes and different forms and different weight. And that has kept my brain active, let's say.
Terrific. And in the next round of questions, we're going to ask all about Curb and how to get in there. Let's go. We're going to go sort of back on a round two. Tiffanie, it has been said that this is the year of the Black woman, finally getting their long-deserved recognition, but that's pretty new. You've been writing about American racism for years. You are a Black woman. Can you tell us about challenges you faced in getting your voice heard?
Ooh. Um, Wow, that's such a huge question because it was a complete uphill battle. Let's say it was never easy because racism is something that coming out of the Obama era and the whole colorblind era, it was just unthinkable that there was such a thing as racism. So when I first started writing pieces addressing racism or even just talking about my experiences as a Black woman, it was for like a small webzine for white women called The Frisky. Back in
Oh,
like
I remember that.
2012. Yeah. And there was a really forward-thinking editor there who would just let me write whatever I wanted to. And so she published a couple of my writing about racism, and the readership just went insane. They were like, "What is this? There's no such thing as racism!" Like they were actually really angry. But she stuck by me and continued to pay me to write about it. So that was pretty much my first entryway into the industry on that subject matter. So transitioning from that small little publication into the more mainstream media, it was it really required editors taking a big chance on me. And the first big break I got was in 2013 with Salon.com, where I wrote a similar piece to what I published in the New York Times over the summer last summer. And that's when I really started to get some traction on the subject because everybody saw how the piece was very popular and they were like, well, she must be on to something, this crazy Black girl. Maybe she's saying something real. So I would say from that point moving forward, it was still an uphill battle. These 7 years, it was like, there's still that tension where even if somebody wants to acknowledge something like racism, people are afraid of how to broach the subject. Nobody wants to do it wrong. But this year, I would say now I have editors kind of reaching out to me like, hey, look, listen, we want to write about this. We want to do this. And they're allowing me to take the lead because as you said, it's the year of the Black women. It's time to listen, folks. We've been saying the same thing for a long time. So, hey, maybe now.
Uh, I want to call out that we have gone through a major popular or cultural shift. And I have been reading a number of books by Black people, men and women, who are in a sense apologizing for their prior going along with this colorblind thing and realizing that it did not sit true with them at all. And so now we're seeing a shift and you're at the forefront and we appreciate your telling us about it. Meredith, it is a high bar to get into NBC Think. You work with a lot of top experts in their field, so it seems a little bit intimidating to pitch you. What is your advice for the people here on how they could pitch the section and where they could maybe find their way in?
Yeah, I think that NBC News Think is a good example of where you have lots of different types of freelancers all kind of mixing together. We absolutely do use a ton of experts and we prioritize experts on topics where there is a field of study that has a lot of experts. So for freelancers, I think you first need to think about what is the topic and who, kind of being honest with yourself, am I the best person to write on this topic, right? So if you want to write something about a legal opinion, about the Constitution, trying to think like, okay, can I make a smarter point or a different point than a constitutional law professor? Because I will tell you right now, I have 25 constitutional law professors who are smart, who are trying to pitch potentially on the same thing. So being honest with yourself first about the topic. And it is very possible for freelancers who are not, at the top of their field to write about issues like the law or health or something like that. But you have to think of the angle that makes sense for you, the angle that where you do have something to say that's more interesting or more personal, or I think don't come at it thinking I'm going to out expert the expert. Do come at it thinking like, yeah, an expert can talk about this part of coronavirus, about the science of wearing masks, but I can come at this, I can talk to you about mask wearing from a personal perspective because I have a pre-existing condition, or I have allergies, or I have this really not unique, but really personal take. And so I never tell people like there's a topic they shouldn't be pitching on, even if it seems like we prioritize experts, but you do need to be aware of what angles are not going to be quite as available to you in that case.
And one thing we talked about is that many individuals have a lot of pop culture expertise just through their loves and passions. And this is a way in. And there was a recent piece looking at the Joss Whedon Me Too sex scandal, and by a woman who was just a giant Buffy fan. And she just tore him to shreds, showing the buried misogyny in his work. So that was someone who had intense familiarity by being a fan. And so that's something that people should also think about.
And culture and pop culture in particular are topics where anybody can be an expert on something, right? Because it is an inherently personal issue. So you want to write about the Sunday scaries? I'm currently looking for someone to write about that. The phenomenon of people being scared to start their work week on Sunday. That's a topic that anyone can be an expert in. You just need to have anxiety on Sundays, right? I could take a psychologist on that, or I could just take someone who like feels that really deeply in their bones and has something interesting to say about it. So culture and pop culture and the way we live, all of those things, aging are in some ways easier topics to pitch on. Not that there's an easy topic, but that's definitely true. If you're a Buffy fan, you are an expert on something. You're an expert on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
There you go.
And that
everybody, she just gave you a proposal. So we're gonna be pitching. Okay, Susan, Sue, you write about deeply personal experiences: drug addiction, loss, love, obsession, betrayal. Your honesty and self-exposure are truly connect. I mean, truly connect with the reader. But honestly, that can be scary as a writer. What has been the fallout for you personally, and what do you advise for those of us, and I include myself in this, who are considering how much we want to expose ourselves?
You know, what's funny is I was agreeing with Meredith. I was like shaking my head, which I do too much on Zoom. I see when I watch myself on tape, but about the mask thing, one of my students, Christine Weinman, wrote this great piece about how she had a jaw disorder and she loved wearing masks because it was the first time that she wasn't self-conscious going out, and she sold it to the Washington Post, and a book editor picked it up, like wants a book on it. So I love what you said. And I was also thinking when you said about you don't need a PhD on a subject, I was just going to say, Jessica, that, you know, I'm a former drug addict and alcoholic and chain smoker, and that led to like a whole bunch of books. So you don't need a PhD. If you had bad habits you got over, sometimes that's enough to.
I don't know, Sue, you've cornered the market.
Yeah, there's a lot of addiction books out there. You know what I love to say, Jessica, you know, I'm from like this redneck conservative Michigan background, and they're all like, oh my God, what happened after you wrote about, you know, you did drugs and you had these, you know, you had love affairs, and oh my God, you put all this stuff out there. What's happened to you? What's happened to me? Made a shitload of money. I have this exciting marriage. I got this huge apartment. I have 1 billion students. And editors email me every day. You know, nothing bad ever happened. Nothing bad happens. In fact,
but I do want to ask you.
My shrink's favorite line is lead the least secretive life you can.
Okay. But what about your family? You said that your family hated every one of your books. And the truth of the matter is, did anyone in your family ostracize you because of what you've exposed?
No, we're very, very close. We're very, very close, you know, and luckily I have a great shrink who's just like, they're not your audience. They're threatened. Who cares? You know, just like go for it. Live your life. You're in New York City, you know, don't be controlled by other people's limitations. You know, and I come from a confessional poetry background. I have an MFA. I studied with, you know, luminary poets and you know, and those are my idols. And like I said, you know, I'm lucky I've done a lot of therapy, and also everyone's in a different position. You know, my husband's a writer, so he understands. And I don't have kids, you know, and I definitely think that if you're writing about your kids or posting stuff about them, that's a different story. And I will say the new school wasn't in love with certain things that I wrote about them. So, you know, I try to be careful. You know, but in general, I try to liberate people, you know, and I just try, when it comes to students, it's just like, it's your life, it's your story. You have a right to your story. You have a right to your opinions. There's definitely ways that you can be careful. I mean, I never let any of my students, you're not allowed to just trash, you know, a boss or a family member or an ex and say horrible things about them. I mean, that's libelous and also not interesting to read. In fact, my rule with first person writing is you have to question, out, challenge, and trash yourself more than anybody else to make it good writing. you know,
Okay.
so
You have to be the butt of the joke, not someone else. That is really.
and also,
really
you know,
good.
and you could punch you know, and you could punch up, but you don't punch down, you know.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of rules so that you know, so that there's good first person writing, that's, you know, there's beautiful first person writing and great opinion pieces that are based on your own experience, that, you know, that I think are, you know, I mean, I have students publishing every day, especially during the pandemic. It's, you know,
Okay.
writing about their work. So I try to get people to not get hung up. And if they are hung up, there's a lot of ways around it. For example, if you're that petrified, do book reviews, you know, do third person reported pieces for a while if you're afraid to jump into first person. Or by the way, there's third person op-eds with research, you know, so if you're not ready at the very beginning to write first person, there's a ton of ways around it. Write fiction, you know, write novels. So short
There you go.
stories. Yeah, so there's ways around it.
Okay.
Can I just say something?
Yes, please.
I think I took Sue's class back when I was in college, and she always used to say, you know, my family hates all of my writing. My family hates all of my writing, and that's how, when your family hates your writing, that's when you know you're doing a great job. And so that really prepped me. My mother hated the crap out of so much of my writing. I was like, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, the rule is the first piece you write that your family hates means you found your voice.
Okay.
She was right. She was
Okay.
right.
Okay, and this is at the new school, so we have a whole coterie there. Okay, we are going on to Chris. There is honestly crazy competition to break into Curbed. It is an extremely strong section, as well as the city reportage in New York Magazine, and you are a city editor. Curbed has had everything from THC-laced pizza to why suicides have plagued the Hudson Yards honeycomb, a story that went around actually through my meme circle. And what is your advice on, similar with Meredith, how to pitch Curb? What is the way in to get in there?
I'll say a few things.
Thank you.
One is to look for ideas that are not likely to, that don't feel like things we're likely to have got to already. You know, we have a staff of writers in-house at Curbed, and there's a certain kind of, there are a certain number of stories that we do that are about real estate listings, and those are sort of handled by a dedicated couple of people. And there are certain stories that about new development that are often held, you know, they're either reviews by our architecture critic, Justin Davidson, or similar pieces that are done by our staff writers. What I'm really looking for in a pitch is a couple of things. One is that it should not just pitch a topic. You should pitch an idea. I really want an idea with a, you know, the word take is unfortunate because it gets, what everyone thinks of is the hot take, which is the dumb first reaction to something. But there's a smarter version of that, to have an opinion about something that is informed and unexpected. And that's where the value starts to come in, because, you know, we are often reacting to hard news. So have an idea and an opinion about something, and not just an opinion as in, hey, this is bad, but something a little more nuanced and interesting than that. Secondarily, this sounds so basic and so dumb, and at the same time, it's something amazing how often people don't get it. Tell me something I don't know, right? You know, surprise me a little. Very often, the reaction to a news story is, you know, that it's good or bad, and it's the reaction 90% of us have. And a lot of the pitches I get are sort of reactions in the same vein as my reaction to a news story, and it's a lot less interesting. Third, if you have particular access to something I don't know that I can't get from the people who already work with me, then I'm much more interested. If you have particular expertise in a field, sometimes that matters, you know. I wish I could come up with a good example off the top of my head. You know, some of our critics have worked as makers of the art form they're writing as critics about, you know.
Very interesting.
Our drama critic has worked in the theater, so very often she knows how things work She was also a dancer, and when there's a Broadway show she's writing about that incorporates a lot of dance, she can write about it with incredible nuance and authority because she knows exactly what she's looking at. And this comes up in a lot of fields, you know? If you are looking at something, I don't know, on Curb, let's say it's an urban planning story, and you know, maybe you trained as an architect and you see some building in a way that no ordinary observer would. That might give you a leg up on anybody else who wants to write about it.
Are there particular areas where you feel that you do need copy? New York Magazine is in a really strong position with a lot of people on staff. If people are thinking about areas where maybe they are not, or is it really more just, I know something interesting?
Yeah, it doesn't really work like that. You know, I can never at any given time say, I want more pieces about, you know, the Sunday Scaries or whatever, you know. But a good Sunday Scaries pitch, especially in this year of anxiety. I mean, I'm not going to call for that because you beat me to it, Meredith. But you know, something that feels like it's of this moment has value.
Okay.
The thing about New York Magazine, going back to its first issue, is that it is obsessed with the new. We are always looking at what's next in every way.
That is a very good tip. Everybody take that to heart. So your evergreens are just, it needs to be moving forward.
They're okay, but new is better by and large.
Okay, that sounds good. We're going into round 3, folks. So that's real good. We're tracking. Meredith, when we first met a few years ago, you were specializing in identity politics at Mike, and then you expanded to global opinion at Quartz. It's something that people discuss a lot. Should they specialize or should they generalize? Can you talk about how that's worked in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit different for me than a freelancer, honestly. I think that there are pluses and minuses to both. For opinion specifically, I think better to generalize personally because I mean, that's the reason why I like doing opinion, because I get to do so many different topics. And it is just like a new challenge and a new learning experience every day. Besides, otherwise, if I was doing, you know, political editing, I was just editing politics every day, I might burn out. But I really appreciate my favorite thing is when I've been doing, you know, 3 politics pieces in a row, which can be very depressing. Then I just go and find a culture piece. And that actually is like my self-care, which is sad in the sense of working can't really be self-care, but like how I give myself a mental break is I go find a story that is more interesting and lighter or more fun or whatever. And that variety really does, I think, prevent me from burning out, especially in news cycles that are tremendously depressing. But for if you're a freelancer, I think specializing is more useful, especially in the sense that it helps you build relationships with editors who know you as an expert on a topic and are more likely to go to you on those topics. So if you're, especially if you've been freelancing for a while, or you're kind of in the medium range, when you're starting out, don't specialize, pitch to everyone, you know, like don't limit yourself, cast a wide net. But I think if you get in a groove and you have a couple of editors who start to trust you on topics, then instead of you pitching to them all the time, they may pitch to you, and that can lead to steadier work. So establishing your credibility on certain topics, I think can be a good thing for a freelancer.
Okay, thank you for that. Sue, I'm already seeing some questions. We're moving into books. Folks, book writers, we have you here. We're now moving into that process for you. Someone already asked about going from that essay to the book. Sue, it is something I hear writers talk about all the time. They're worried about writing the essay because they think someone will steal their idea, and just wonder how much to put out there. What are you seeing in terms of sparking that book deal? Get it out there as an essay, how has that worked for you?
I think it's the exact opposite. I put it out there right away to claim it, you know. So for example, when I was getting all the rejections of Forgiveness Tour, I wrote an essay for Salon that tells the entire story of the book called The Forgiveness Tour, because I wanted my name to be on there in case anybody else was going to steal it. And then it went viral, and then it won some awards. It was hilarious. I got an award for ASJA, and I remember standing up in front of a whole group of writers, and I said, you know, I've written 1,000 pages and you guys have just let me know that 1,000 words of it works. And everybody just totally got what that meant. But I say put it out there early on. And I can't tell you how many times with a student, they publish sometimes their very first piece, or sometimes like Tiffanie, just like a fantastic piece that gets fantastic placement, and editors and agents call them immediately. In fact, I had one student, a 21-year-old, who first thing she ever wrote, the vice president of HarperCollins called her and bought her book. So I actually think it's a fantastic way to start. And here's a trick. If you're working on a book project and you can't sell, you know, 3 pages is obviously way easier to write than 300. But if you can't sell 300 word, 3 pages, if you can't sell a short piece, you're doing something wrong, because that means you don't know the title, or you don't know the subject, or, you know, so I would say that's actually a really good test if you're working on something, to see if you could publish a short section, whether it's an opinion section or whether it's an essay, personal essay. But I mean, it works for biographies, essay collections, memoirs, self-help, YA, MG, fiction and nonfiction. I've had students who've gotten one essay published on a similar topic as their novel, and then at the bottom they'll say so-and-so is working on a novel, and editors and agents want that. And truthfully, I that's part of the reason why I love I do online classes now, but I love posting all of my students' pieces, and I can't tell you how many editors and agents see it on social media. It's people make fun of social media. It is so great for this. So I love posting it on all my pages, and editors and agents are dying, book editors and literary agents are dying to see this kind of stuff. And it, you know, I just think it's a great thing to do, and I never hold back. I don't, in fact,
okay, let's clarify though that what you're posting are published pieces. These are never unpublished. Correct?
True, they are. And quite often if a student
should know that.
Yes, and quite often if a student posts a big thing on Facebook or on a blog, or is giving it away for free on Medium, I will text them or I will email them and I'll say, don't give that away. That's so great. Don't give it away for free. Take it down and work on it. It's one thing to do a few lines or a photo or something like that, because sometimes an editor will see it that way. And I have to say, I've had students that have sold books on Instagram books and Twitter books. So
Okay.
So I
many ways to do that. Thank you very much for that, Chris. You've written 3 books. Instant was about the history of Polaroid, an extraordinary story, and most recently Flash on Weegee. You, even though you're experienced, have also faced challenges, especially switching to a new genre of biography, which was Weegee. Could you tell us about the process of actually making that book happen?
Sure, of course. The first book, just I'll go through them quickly. The first book was a little next to the cash register. It didn't have a through line or anything, and I more or less, a friend of mine had offered me the chance to collaborate with her on it, and then she dropped out, so it was on me. And it was a very small book and a very small project, and I had the idea that I could sort of practice writing a book and find out if I had the discipline to put 50,000 words in a row, after never having written anything nearly so long, because I was a magazine guy and especially a writer of short magazine pieces. A few years after that, I wrote a piece for the magazine when Polaroid stopped making film, and it was 400 words long. It was that big, 3 paragraphs. And I fell down a research hole and kept reading and kept reading. And the quotes I had got for the piece had rather strong reactions. They were artists who worked in Polaroid, and they were angry rather than mournful. And I kept thinking, something's here, something's here. And what I discovered very quickly was the story had 3 acts: rise, invention, rise, collapse, and a little coda. And a central character, the founder of Polaroid, was a guy named Edwin Land, who, to go very quickly, was the Steve Jobs of his day. And I also found out that I also realized that it had come to an end because Polaroid was going out of the film business, so I could tell the whole story. And it very quickly developed that they had given their archives to Harvard Business School, and they were about to open to researchers.
And you got right in there.
So
So-
I bought a train ticket to Boston, and yes, no, and I wrote a proposal, and I couldn't sell it. It was very difficult to sell. This was 2009, and the economy had just collapsed. And I was
Yes,
putting
we
it in all
remember.
candor because I thought I might get laid off, and I should have a lifeboat. And the book idea was a lifeboat. And then the book didn't sell for some time because the economy was so bad that nobody was buying anything. And I talked to my agent, and she said, sometimes these things happen. It's just it's not on you. And I said, well, suppose we take it to a small press and do it for. She said, and then you'll have a book. And I decided to gamble on it. And I realized that's not a gamble everybody can take. I had a day job, so I could pay the rent, and I did not really take a book leave. I just burned my vacation time to go research it.
Chris, let me interrupt if you don't mind. How long did it take you to sell that book finally?
I would have to dig back through. It was months.
Months. Okay.
Yeah.
And what you told me about what you finally did, I mean, in the book world, months is not a long time.
No, I suppose not, but she had sort of my agent had sort of run through, her submission process and was like.
With Weegee, your agent, and tell us your agent's name.
So my agent is Christine Dahl at ICM.
Okay, by the way, folks, it's like one of the top 3 agents in the whole entire world.
That's
Excellent agent.
She is extraordinary. I am a rounding error to her.
Okay, no, she's phenomenal. Okay, let me get to the question.
She gives me what I need.
She sent back your proposal. I want everyone to know how hard writing books is. On Weegee, since she sent it back to you 3 times to rewrite.
He put me through.
That was a bear.
She played editor on me. And she was brutal in the best possible way. First, I wrote the Weegee proposal. I had pitched it to her in a phone call, and she said, yeah, I think so. Okay, start writing a proposal. Sent it to her, sent it back a few days later. She got on the phone and said, yeah, there's a book in here. That's not it.
Okay, how long, we got to move it along. How long did it take you to rewrite that proposal?
I turned it around in a couple of weeks. She turned it back again. I got discouraged, and I set it aside for a couple of months.
Okay.
And then made a New Year's resolution to fix it. January came.
Excellent.
3rd draft, she read it and said, okay, fix this and this and this, and this can go out. I can sell this.
And she did? 3 drafts, folks.
Mhm.
Sue, what's the most number of drafts you've ever done on a book proposal?
10 years worth for Forgiveness Store.
10 years worth, never ends. It's like no exit. Okay, but there is an exit, which is to buy the book at an independent bookstore for both of these guys. Tiffanie, I'm just gonna bum people out. I apologize. We're not gonna hate on you. She finished her book proposal in 4 days, and she wrote the memoir in 3 months. Okay, and she's been cranking stories. Okay, plus she's in the sun. I don't know if that has something to do with it. That's incredible. And you've got 2 small children at home. Okay, I was going to ask you what's your secret. Tell us in 1 sentence, and then I'm actually going to go right to a question someone asked in chat. What's the secret? How do you do it?
Well, I can answer your question in 2 words.
Okay.
My mama.
I'm sorry?
No, really.
I didn't hear.
My mama.
Her mama, she lives in an all-female household, and she just wrote an essay about how an all-female household is an equal one and everyone does the work. Okay, but now let's go. And so folks, if you can get your mama, that is the answer. Someone wrote in, and so I'm just gonna short circuit right to it. They wanted to know exactly the process when that essay, A Black American Refugee, came out, how you went from that to the book. Just give us that right in there. I remember reading it. I didn't know that you'd be here right now. It was sensational. What happened?
Well, as soon as I even got the piece accepted, I told Susan Shapiro about it, my former professor, and she was like, put that you're writing a book, put that you're writing a book. And I'm like, but wait, I'm not writing a book. She's like, yes, you are. So at the bottom of the piece, I made sure to put, I'm working on a book. And at that point, as soon as the piece was published, I started querying editors, my agent. I started looking for an agent, and Sue introduced me to an amazing agent, Susan Colomb. with Writer's House. And that's pretty much how I went from essay to having an agent and working on the proposal. And as soon as I got the agent, I was like, listen, we're on a tight schedule. I got mouths to feed. We're doing this. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm going to get this to you in a couple of days. And she was like, what? I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I turned it over as quickly as I could. And she was amazing. She worked with me and got me edits back right away. And we sent it out within, I would say, about 2 weeks of publishing the New York Times piece. The book proposal was on the desk of several publishing houses.
And did it go to auction?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so this is hot, folks, and that's a land speed record. I can tell you that. That's awesome. Okay, folks, we are now going into our bullet rounds. We're just going to zoom through this panel with the questions you all want to know. Okay, you ready? Okay, and we're just going to go, everyone's in a different order, so go in alphabetical order right through you guys. So that's my last name, Bennett, Bonanos, Drayton, Shapiro. Did I get it? Oh my God, that was like advanced math. Okay. What are the biggest mistakes to avoid that you've either made or seen? Let's do it. We're starting with Meredith.
Oh, sorry. The biggest mistake that I've made, the biggest mistake that people send when they send pitches is that they send a really good pitch on something that we've already done. That is just such a waste of a really strong pitch. Is that
Read the publication. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Exactly. We often get pitches for things that we've kind of been over already, or that's just too similar to something we've already done. And then secondarily, if you're pitching New York Magazine, don't call it the New Yorker.
Okay, do not do that. Tiffanie. Biggest mistakes you've made or that you've seen?
Oh,
We'll take ones you've made. We want to hear the dirt.
I told you that I sent an editor at the New York Daily News several pitches, and I spelled his name wrong every single time. And this was over the course of years. I don't even know how I accomplished it. And every single time I would send it, I would notice the error. And his name is like the most basic name. How do you even get it wrong? And I would notice the error right as I sent it. I was like, oh my God, I did it again. Okay. So I did that a lot.
Okay, I climbed a mountain, then came off it and broke my ankle, right? I was down the mountain. Okay, that's a true story. Sue, biggest mistakes.
I diagram this stuff in Byline Bible for my students. So I would say the biggest mistakes are people are trying to pitch stuff that isn't timely at all, that isn't dramatic at all, that they don't have a platform for, as Meredith mentioned. Too long, like why isn't nobody's paying? I just got an email while I'm in the Zoom, I get an email from someone, a student of mine. Oh, I have this, I did the piece I mentioned, it's 27, the essay's 2,700 words. It's like, who wants 2,700 words?
Average length for an op-ed for the New York Times, 750 words.
Yes.
Meredith, average length for your op-ed.
And essays shorter than that, you know, so pay attention. So, and by the way, it's so easy to Google, you know, Google the publication, see the length that they're doing, notice, you know, read 100 pieces that they've run. There's that great line, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So read what they're writing and don't pitch something that, you know, that they don't do.
Okay, folks.
Can I toss in one more?
Yes, Chris,
please.
One more, definitely.
It's a similar point worth making. The pitch that runs on for paragraph and paragraph looking for the idea. If you can't pitch it in 3 sentences, if it's a short essay, you probably don't have the idea yet.
Okay, and what you told me, and I tell my students at NYU, is if you say, I want to explore, okay, no, you have to already have explored.
You explored it already.
Angle.
Yes.
Okay, folks, it takes a lot more work. Really, it's sad. It's sad because you will go poor right.
Let me add something that Christopher told my students that I love. Put the title. Get a really hot title and subtitle so that they can see it.
Write the headline.
That was great advice.
You know, absolutely. I used to have an editor at National Geographic Traveler who would beat me on the head until I had a headline. She was satisfied and she wouldn't run it up the chain or bring it to an editorial meeting until I did that. And it was a bummer. And now I make my students do it and they don't like it either. Okay, now we have a question about pitching. This comes up all the time. Excuse me. When should you just send a pitch without any kind of attachment and ask for an assignment? And when should you send the whole piece if you've already written it? It's very different. We're going to go right around the same way. Meredith. Should I repeat the
Got
question?
me.
When do you want to see the story and the whole story? And when do you just want to see like an assignment request, like a query for an assignment?
Yeah, I mean, if you've already written something on spec, that's fine. You can attach it, but I never want to see the whole draft. I only want to see a pitch, two to three paragraphs at most. And then we will go back and forth, and don't send me the draft until I have confirmed with you that I am in it. And we have an agreement. You may not have signed the contract, but then you have an email agreement. So at the very least, if we don't run your piece, then you can get a cut fee.
Okay, do not send it until she tells you to. Folks, that's permission marketing. Okay, do not market that until they tell you to. Chris.
Basically similar. Send me an email, keep it, as I said, tight and short. If the idea is clear from your very, very short synopsis, and then you say, I've written it already, it's easy for me to say, yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Excellent.
But that's fine.
Okay, no one wants unsolicited attachments, like, ever. Okay, Tiffanie, how do you do it?
Well, I've only ever freelanced, so I've done every kind of cold pitch. I've pitched editors that I've never worked with. So the key thing for me really is just to know your story and to sell it really well. So that first line for me, that headline is going to be that eye-grabbing, that attention-grabbing line that you're going to want to read more. So once you kind of draw in the editor, I don't even think it matters whether they are seeing the whole piece or just a synopsis. They're going to want to know more about the story once they want to know more about the story. So you have one opportunity to sell the story and you go for it right away, and that's it. So you can, while you can work on a completed draft, which I've done for example, for the New York Times, it was required that I submitted the full story before it was even considered. So I've had that experience. However, I've also done a lot of pitches where I only send one paragraph and I'm like, look, listen, this is what you need, this is why you need it, and it gets picked up right away. So it really just depends.
Okay, excellent. And Meredith.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that also really depends on like the volume of the place and the size of the team. And so like at the New York Times, where they are maybe they have time to read through drafts and make that call. I get so many emails. So I'm making literally 30-second decisions on emails. I'm not looking at attachments. So you send and I can read it and I make the decision and go on. And if I have to stop and I've already moved on and I'm going to have to come back to it. So if you give me too much information, it means that I'm going to have to come back to it and you may have missed the boat. So that's why, especially if it's something really timely for a kind of a small team that has a lot of churn, then yeah, you want to be really brief and grabby.
Okay, excellent. And I'm actually going to skip Sue and move on to the next question because I think we have plumbed the depths of this question.
Although wait, can I just add one thing? Which is part of the reason why I have so many editors come to my classes, and coming to an event like this with great editors like Meredith and Chris is that if you can ever meet the editor and find out their preference, that's the best way. Because there are editors, for example, the New York Times op-ed page will not look at a pitch. They really want the full piece. Versus I've had 10 different op-ed editors, including Newsweek recently, who just said, no, we want the pitch first. So a lot of editors are different. So if there's any way you could come to a panel like this, you could Google, a lot of editors put it out on Twitter. So try to find out before you just randomly send the piece or the pitch, find out what the editor wants.
Okay, Sue, thank you for that. And by the way, Sue regularly holds panels on these topics. She also teaches, and follow us here, follow her, and you constantly have to go to these panels to meet the editors. Okay, now we're going to get down to the nitty gritty, and I'm going to go right to Meredith and Chris with apologies. How can people contact you? Can you put your email into the chat, write it in there so people can see it? And what are your rates? Okay, I'm just helping the audience here with the hardest question of the night.
I can go first. So the best way is I will put my email in the chat. Please obviously use it with discretion, right? Like, don't send me a bunch of pitches that are bad. Don't send me a bunch of pitches in a row. I know that sounds obvious, but
that's important. That's important.
Like, truly, yes. But also when you email me, because I do have such a high volume of pitches, CC the Think inbox, because we also have a general email. And so that is just kind of doubling your chance that someone will see the pitch. If it is timely, put that in the subject.
Okay, and Chris. Oh, whoa, we're not letting you go yet, Meredith. What are the rates, the range? I
Oh,
know it's
sorry, yes. So for a typical op-ed that's not reported, and we're not asking for on a crazy turnaround time, our rates are 350 for about 800 to 900 words. There's some flexibility if you want to do a bunch of reporting that or if we're asking for something on a super tight turnaround, like, can you write this in 3 hours?
I had that happen and I made them double the fee. Okay.
The Independent.
I wasn't gonna say.
Brilliant piece. I loved it. I love the piece.
I want to thank you. I just wanted to give the principle. Not call out any editors. Okay, if they want in 3 hours, double the fee. Okay, Chris, how should they pitch you? How do you prefer to be pitched? And can you give us the rate range?
I will also put my excuse me, email address in the chat.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of reassuring to hear, Meredith, because the rates are just about the same for us.
Okay.
Almost exactly. And we think about them the same way too. Does this story require a super fast turnaround? We can pay you a little more. Does it require a lot of hard reporting? We can pay you a little more. Is it a personal essay that you can sort of run up out of your own head? We can pay a little less there because you don't have to leave your chair. You know, it's a little bit of a sliding scale based on how much we're asking to do, but it's in the same range. Yep.
Okay. And I'm going to ask one final question that is very difficult, perplexing one in the field that professional journalists, freelancers debate all the time, and that is about simul pitching. Editors have long stated that they do not accept simultaneous pitching, meaning that you send it to more editor than one editor at once. However, that puts freelancers in a terrible knot because often editors do not respond for a very long time. And it seems to many professional writers like a little bit of a monopolistic power play. What do you advise? How can freelancers handle this? And I'm going to start with the two editors on what do you think of this? Well, let's start with Chris.
You know, I wouldn't know if you're pitching it elsewhere because you're just pitching me, you know. When I freelance, I don't do it. And I would find it terribly frustrating if I were working a piece through up the chain and trying to get to a yes, and then had somebody who had pitched it to me say, oh, by the way, never mind. But I recognize that you have to make a living, and if I'm taking too long, it happens. What's really not cool, and I have had this happen, and it's infuriating, is that somebody pitches a piece to me, I greenlight it, I fail to assign it to someone else, and then I find out a few days later that they have decided to take it elsewhere.
Yikes.
That's really not cool.
I would say, I don't want double pitches, but if you're double pitching, you need to tell me about it. And you should really only be doing it if it is like a super timely thing, and then just be super transparent. Hi, I'm pitching this to you. I'm also pitching it to 2 other outlets. I'd like to get it placed by X time. I think it's helpful to put a time limit on any pitch, actually. So if you are exclusively pitching it to us, great, say the same thing. I'm exclusively pitching it to you. If you don't get back to me by 4 p.m., I'm going to start pitching it elsewhere. That's the safest compromise, I think, is to pitch it exclusively with a clock on it and say after 4 p.m., I will pitch it elsewhere. And then I can see in that email, oh, it's 5 o'clock. Now I'm going to send you an email and being like, I want this, but did you already, have you already pitched it out? That way we're all on the same page. No one is wasting their time. If you say you're double pitching it and I say I want it and you've sold it elsewhere, that's sad, not the end of the world. If you don't tell me you're double pitching it, I do want it, and worse, I've done work on it and I say I want this, I may not use you again. So, just be really, really careful, because I don't have time for that.
I
You're
was
in his mud
Yeah,
if you do that.
that's sort of my experience too. And, I do understand that if I get a pitch for something that says this has to go today because it's timely, and you say I'm pitching it a couple of places, I don't usually do this, but I'm a reasonable person. I understand that. Yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Chris, you are very reasonable. I appreciate that. Okay, Sue and Tiffanie, do you want to add anything to this?
I'll just add that again, the more editors that you can meet and ask, because just for an example, Dan Jones at Modern Love doesn't care at all if you multiple submit. He only says, and Tin House doesn't care. They just say the minute that you sell it elsewhere, let me know so I don't have to read it. So again, you guys give yourself credit for coming to the panel and getting to hear Meredith and Chris talk and hearing Tiffany's experiences. So I would say, don't write in a vacuum. There's, you can go on my website and watch 15 of these panels just for free, press a button. So get access to editors and find out what they want, because there are editors who say no multiple submission at all, and other editors don't care. So I would say, your best bet is going to be finding out the editors. And by the way, you're getting complimented, Jessica. People love how you're moderating in the chat. Did you see?
Well, thank you. We all need all the compliments we can get these days. And back at you guys, panelists. Tiffanie.
I think that Sue's advice is actually perfect, because in my experience, I've never really been successful with double pitching, though I have done it before. I've been more successful landing pieces where I have a connection with the editor, whether it be via panels. I've been to a million of Sue's panels. Even if I know somebody who works for the publication, even if they don't do editing, I can kind of say, oh, hey, X, Y, and Z person, I can ask for an intro that way. So kind of getting into the nitty gritty of the network, I would say, has been really crucial to my success, or to landing pieces, more so than just sending it to as many people as possible. Because the last thing I want to say is, I think when you have a fantastic piece, you kind of go into it with a vision for where that piece should be placed. And that's going to help you kind of figure out how much words you need in the piece, how you're going to approach the piece in general. So going into it with a goal in mind of where you want it to land, and also who you want it to land with. Sue was saying about Twitter. I've seen so many calls on Twitter for pitches. It's insane. I see pitch calls all the time, and I'm always like sending it to my girlfriends, like, hey, do this. I see this is an amazing opportunity. So for example, if you see a pitch call on Twitter, you can get on your email and say, look, listen, I saw your pitch call. I have this perfect pitch for you. And because you're actually paying attention to that person on social media, and even if you hit the follow button, I always hit the follow, give them a follow, they're going to be more receptive to whatever you're pitching. So making that connection, I would say, is more important than just sending it out to 1,000,001 people.
Okay.
Also,
absolutely.
by the way, just to add really quickly, what was brilliant with Tiffanie is she came to class, she was serious, she paid attention, she went and met all the editors who came to class after. Jessica, you're a fantastic teacher, I know. Classes are just really smart. I know how many times you've hooked up your students and helped them, and you bring in people. So there's an educated way to go about this. A lot of people, come up to me and they're just like, well, how does one freelance? And I'm like, well, one could take a class very easily, or go to panels, or, it's really easy, especially now everything's on Zoom.
Okay, look, networking is crucial. And I've been watching the comments here. We are now moving into the open comment section. I just want to say a few things first. People who feel maybe a little sad that we can't see each other, we feel sad too. But let me say this, you can still make the connection with a panelist here by having listened to what they said. And when you write that pitch, say, I saw you at the Deadline Club panel. I appreciated what you said about X, Y, and Z. Show you were listening, and then make your pitch. There is a cyber connection here that is going on also in terms of your knowledge. I've been seeing questions going by here about how long to wait before follow-up, which is a very typical question and very vexing to the most veteran journalists. Any thoughts here on that?
Yeah, what I was going to say, or I said briefly, if it's really, really timely, send me a follow-up, because again, I get a lot of emails. I'm not annoyed by a follow-up or a little nudge. If I haven't gotten back to you after, if I haven't gotten back to you and the timeliness is no more, then it's a moot point. But if it's like, okay, 24, 48 hours go by, it's still pretty timely, it's tied to something in the week or the month, send me an email. If I still haven't gotten back, that's an indicator that I'm either super slammed or I'm just dragging my feet on replying to this, but I still do try and reply to every single pitch. So keep that in mind. I would say don't send more than 2 follow-ups, because that's too much. But I never am upset by 1 follow-up, especially if it's timely, to bring it back to the top of my inbox.
Okay, folks, start putting in your questions there. I have been sort of eyeballing some of them. Someone asked actually, what is double pitching? I hope that came out of the discussion. I know when I first heard about it, I was like, I can't understand that. Are you telling me that pitching more than 1 editor at the same time has a word for it? It's something special. Wouldn't you normally do that? No, you would not normally do that. And I think Meredith and Chris have explained that if you were going to pitch more than editor at the same time, you must tell them. Only do it with something that is extremely timely, and then you follow up. And if you want to, you just have to tell them, because if you ever get caught doing that when you've already sold it, that editor who got nailed or sort of burned will never work with you again. Okay, let's see your questions coming in now. There were a few that came in earlier that I've worked in. I've worked in, well, someone wrote earlier, where do you break into book reviews? Sue, you had mentioned that the market has changed tremendously.
I actually answered that question in the chat. So think Brooklyn Rail, The Millions, LARB, Rumpus. There's a lot of places where where a freelancer could pitch a book review and get an assignment right away. Some pay, some don't, but it's just, by the way, Publishers Weekly and Kirkus Reviews, if you have any expertise, they pay between $20 and $50. To review. People can
hear those words and I want to cry. Oh my God, really?
Well, just to start, people can email me, profsue123@gmail.com if they have
okay
about that.
Look, and everybody, courtesy to our panelists, and I'm going to include myself, please follow us, follow them all on Twitter. We're winding down. Someone, Anna Gibson, thank you for your question, is asking, how easy is it to use a pen name as a journalist or author? And honestly, for people revealing very personal things or just not wanting to be Googled with that name, it's a legit question.
Maybe the editors can answer that. What do you guys think?
What do you think?
We've never done that at NBC News. Very, very, very hard. You have to prove, we have a very strict anonymity policy. And so, no. And if you use a pen name and I don't know it's a pen name and then we publish it, I will get in huge trouble. So definitely don't do that. Our standard for whether or not you can use pen names or anonymity is like harm will come to your family, and we'll have to go through standards. So super high. If the one small difference is if you have a slightly different pen name that you use professionally, and it's like it includes your middle name or something like that, we have allowed people to use kind of a professional writing pen name, but not one that is completely different to shield their identity.
I'm not seeing questions coming in, and I think we've covered the waterfront, folks. Just let's get some wrap-up comments on anything you'd like to add, and then we're going to say good night. I'll go back to the alphabetical. Meredith?
I really enjoyed this panel, so I hope that it was helpful for people. I would say that my key thing for freelancers always, besides reading the site and making sure it's not redundant, is timing and thinking about when is the right time. And I love so many pitches that come in and we can't use them at that moment. That's okay. But just like, don't be discouraged if that happens, especially if I say it needs a news. It's like, email me again. So once you get that email back from me, that's like your step in the door. It means that I have liked something in this pitch. Ask me what you can change about it, start that dialogue. That's really, really useful. But I say no to the majority of my pitches. So if I say no to your pitch, don't take it personally. Think about how you can do it better the next time.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, that's a valuable point that I'll expand on. We were talking about this just today in an editorial meeting. We say yes to 5-10% of ideas, and that's in-house ideas pitched at meetings in-house.
Wow.
We say no to most things. An editor's job is largely saying no. And I think people get...
I hate that.
People get... that's why the magazine's good sometimes.
It is good.
People get frustrated and lost at why they're not cracking through. And the answer is, our needs are very specific. it doesn't always feel that way when you're reading it. It feels like, well, this is a magazine about a lot of things, you know. But you realize when you see a lot of ideas that we're very picky. So don't let that get you down.
Okay, and you really have to read the publication to get a feel for what those needs are. It's like a relationship, you know, you got to listen to them. Tiffanie.
Ooh. Well, I think the number one thing that I want everybody to really remember, especially my fellow freelancers, oh, ladies, please add me on Facebook because there's a great women's writers group and it's how I've been able to place a whole bunch of work. So add me on Facebook so I can try to invite you to the group. Networking is key, it's fundamental, it will change your life. And you have to really stick with what you are good at. Find your voice and don't turn away from what you have this burning desire to say, because that's what, once you have that energy and that passion, that's what's going to propel you to, for example, for me, it took 7 years, 8, 9 years of being pretty broke before I was able to before I was able to say, okay, well, I have enough to get through, you know. So really stick with that thing that's going to carry you through even hard times. I would say that the most important thing is that you have a message and you want that message to be heard, and that in doing so, you're going to find the perseverance you need to just get through it all. And yeah, so I would say that's the number one thing.
Passion will get you through because you're not going to have lunch. Okay, so.
Yeah, well, I would say I'm doing a lot of 5-week online classes now and one-shot seminars and stuff like that. And so I would say, you know, you guys coming to panels. So I think having a writing community is good. Something else a friend said that I really like is be a good literary citizen. So don't just be out there to like, I want to get published and care about your own byline, but if you like someone else's piece, tweet it, repost it. If there's a book that you admire, you know, so do that. And I'll just end by saying that one of my favorite pieces was rejected 14 times. And on the 15th try, it got in the New York Times Magazine. And it was actually the first place that I tried it, but they'd switched editors in the meantime. And it led to a Random House book. So I always say to writers, to my students, no doesn't mean no. It means like rewrite it, make it timelier and better, and just pitch it to another editor. You know, I mean, 15 rejections. And then it turns out to be like, you know, my most successful piece, but I had to live through the 15 rejections, which is where the therapist came in. But anyway.
Very expensive to live through these rejections. I want to give a shout out to Lanny Russell-Luter, who wrote to us all. Thank you each of you. This is a life changer for this senior citizen. She has put her email. Lanny, we see you. Sue can help you go in her classes to the next step. She really, really will. And with the wisdom of senior years, you've got something to say. And I just want to say to all of you there, and we have been communing in the chat. Thank you so much for joining. We'll have more panels. Keep a lookout. Come join us at the Deadline Club. Get involved with us, get involved with other groups. That's how the networking happens. And also very, very important final message. Please buy the books of the panelists here, but not at Amazon. Support your local bookstore. Sue has long ties with the Strand. We love the Strand. This city would not be the city without them. McNally Jackson, 3 Lives in Greenwich Village. Shout out to your local independent bookstore. Keep them going. And I just want to thank you all, panelists, Sue, Tiffanie, Meredith, Chris. This has been an extraordinary panel. It's such great energy. We are going to kill this pandemic and get published. And so I'm saying to everybody, and can we have some waving, just to wave good night and great energy, happy dreams, and good writing to everybody. So good night.
Good night.